Good morning, everybody. Glad to have you here today. Thank you for joining me. If you will, again, like, share, comment on the post. Once again, even if you did it yesterday. And then if you'd like to follow along, we'll be in Second Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse number 10. Intentionally moving very slow through these verses. There are some deep things that are being talked about here, some things that are important that we understand very clearly and have knowledge of. These are instructions that we need to know as we live in these last days and perilous times. Paul says here in verse 10, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. Paul here is describing the followers of the Antichrist. And these verses in particular are a strong warning to those who don't know Christ. And it reveals the characteristics and the actions of those who will be the followers of the Antichrist and those who get caught up in his lies and his deceit. And he says, starts out by telling us it'll be wicked deception. The followers, he says here, of the Antichrist are those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth. They are perishing, he says, in this verse, and they are the word that is used here is that they are. That they're already, it's a continuous word. They're in the process of perishing. They are away from God. They're and following the Antichrist, and because of that, they're on the road to destruction. They are on the road to hell. They're on the road being separated from God. Why? He says because they refuse to love the truth and to be saved. I want you to notice those words very carefully. Not because God has looked at them and said, this is what I'm going to do to you. Not because because they have been singled out, but they have made a decision. They refused to love the truth and they refused to be saved. They have made a decision. They have deliberately separated themselves from the things of God. They have made, again, their own choice, their own decision. They would not receive the truth. And the word receive there means to welcome. They would not welcome. They would not accept the truth. They didn't love the truth. And because of that, they refused to be saved. They rejected the love of God. Some people ask the question, how can a loving God send someone to hell? Well, the first thing I will say is God doesn't send anyone to hell. God simply acknowledges a person's decision. They chose to go to hell. This verse tells us that. They refused to love the truth. And I would come back at you with the question, why would God take someone who has chosen throughout their life to refuse the truth, to refuse the gospel, to refuse to be saved? They lived this life on this earth and they didn't want anything to do with God. They didn't want a relationship with God. Wouldn't it be cruel of God to take that person who has rejected God, despised God, and make them spend eternity in his presence? They didn't want his presence here. Why would they want his presence in eternity? If you end up in hell, if you end up spending eternity in a devil's hell, it would be because you chose to, because you refused the truth. You refused to be saved, not because of anything that God has done, because God has done everything he can to pay for, to provide you with a way of salvation through Jesus Christ. And so today, let me take just a moment here and encourage you. If you don't know Christ as your Savior, don't spend another day refusing the truth. Don't spend another day refusing to be saved, because that may just be your eternal decision. That decision you make today to reject God may be an eternal decision. And I'd love to talk to you about the opportunity you have to make a different eternal decision, to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and to have the promise of heaven. My information will be at the end of this, and you can contact me, or you find a local Bible believing church and preacher, and you sit down and talk to him, and I bet he'd be thrilled to tell you how you can stop rejecting the truth and you can be saved today. Have a good one. We'll see you here tomorrow morning.